Okay, we're gonna start. Please, student at the back, can you hear me? Yes? Yes. All right, we're gonna start. So let's just do a quick recap. So this is what we left off last week on methods and function on string, where we look at these applications, this little program where we ask user to enter the first name, ask user to enter the last name. And then we have line 3 here, which will compute the initial of the user based on the input of first name and last name from the first 2 lines. And we do dot capitalize on the first 2 characters of the user's input first name and dot capitalize on the first 2 characters of the user's input of last name. Okay, so what it does here is to extract the first element of first name, and here to extract the first element of first name, where first name is a variable that is equals to or assigned to the value based on user input. And then we have a print statement to print what is the initial. And then we use dot index to find the index of initial that is calculated on line 3 on the list class list. Okay, and then again, we print out the index, and then we want to find the score. So we look at quiz 1 index, which is correspond to the position where the students positions in the class, and then we print out the score. Now this works perfectly, regardless whether the user enter any letter case. Okay, because whatever user's input is, we do dot capitalize. Basically, we change the first character to uppercase letter and subsequent letter to lowercase letter. Okay, and that is important because our class list is defined so that the first 2 characters here, this belongs to the first 2 characters of first name, have the first character which is uppercase, and first 2 characters of last name has the first character capital case and the subsequent characters lowercase. Okay, so let's stop here first. Let's run. For example, if I do anything, any cases that I wish, okay, it still works. All right, so this code just works, everything is fine. However, there is one tiny thing that you need to take care of. So what happens when user input of first name is just 1 character? So this is something that you play around, or I've explained it to, with you in the recordings in the lab. So here, for example, if I just put first name is R, just R, and I put last name, can be anything, doesn't have to be just 1 letter. Let's just say the first name is just 1 letter. Okay, I get something called index error. So index error will occur when you try to access a list out of index. Okay, so we get here in line 3, at some point here, there is an index error. So we think about this. First name have only 1 character, so you can only extract 1 character, but you are asking it to extract the first element of first name, which is R, and then you ask it to extract the second element. So index 1 of first name will be the second element, but there is no second element of first name. So this is where the index error immediately occurs. Okay, so remember there will be an index error. So there will be an index error because in line 3, right, the expression first name 1 will attempt to access the first index in the element at index 1 of first name, which does not exist. Okay, so there will be an index error. So in lab, I also explained that how would you like to deal with it. So we have, for example, dealing with if-else statement, which we will study in the future. And then, or we can use slicing. So 2 ways, 2 options to solve this. Okay, so once use if-else statement, which we will study later on. And 2, use index slicing, which we will study later on as well. So now we assume that students always have first name and last name. They are at least 2 characters. All right. So one thing that we wanted to learn is that if student's first name is just 1 character or less than 2 characters, what we're gonna do? Else, if student's characters is more than 2 or at least 2 characters, we continue using the same code. So we need a way to test whether the user's input satisfies certain condition. And for that, we will go to today's topic, which is called Boolean expressions. It's expressions that give a true or false value. True if it satisfies the test, false if it doesn't satisfy the test, which is exactly what we will need when we run the for if and else statement. We need to test whether first name, which is based on the user input, is of 1 character. If it's less than 2 characters, then we're gonna do it special in a special condition. If it is at least 2 characters, we use exactly the same code. So we're gonna learn how to build such Boolean expressions. Now, there are only 2 values of bool type, which is true and false. Okay, notice Python is case sensitive, so capital T, capital F. So a Boolean expression is just an expression that is of type bool. Okay, for example, if A and B are, for example, of any type of objects, such as integer, all right, if you want to check equality, you use A, is it equal B? Okay, do A and B have the same value? So just give you an example, a quick demo. Say, for example, where the 3 is equals to 4. Okay, so we have 2 integers, 3 followed by 2 equal sign equals to 4. It's not assigning a value, it's going to test for equality. So when I run this, it's going to give me the value whether this is true or false. This is merely checking for equality. Okay, so in this case, it will be false. And then we can do other comparison. It doesn't have to be checking equality. We can check whether it's less than equal to, less than, greater equal, greater, and this means not equal. Okay, for example, using the same example above, 3 with the exclamation mark equal sign 4 is test whether, so it's gonna test whether 3 is not equal to 4. Okay, above is testing whether 3 is equal to 4. All right, so 3 not equal to 4, is it true or false? It's true. It will return true. So it's very easy. We'll just do comparison. So let's do it together here. Okay, so we have A is equals to 3, B is equals to 3 as a number. Okay, so we assume A and B are initialized as a number, as an integer in particular, because 3 is an integer. 3 is an integer here. So what is the output of A equals B? Good job, true. And A less than equals to B? True. It's true because it checks whether it's less than or equal. Okay, so if even though it's equal, it's not less than B, but it's equals to B. Now, how about A less than B? False. A greater equals to B? Good job, it's true. A greater than B? And A not equals to B? All right, how about here when A is 3, B is 4? False. And true and true and false. False. True. Good job. Now the other way around, we will have again false. False or true? False. False. True. 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 Okay, good. Now I'm asking you, can you find a value of A and B? So we have true, false, false here. Okay, so now how about this? So I assign a specific value to A and B. So how about I give you something like this? Okay, so now A is assigned the value of the expression 1 plus 2. Okay, so what do you expect here? True. So what it does is it compute the value of 1 plus 2, which is equals to 3, and assign the value 3 to the variable A and check whether 3 is equals to 3. So it will be the same output as the first line here. Does this make sense? Okay. So everything will be the same as the first line. All right. So notice here, I was being tricky here, that I only work on integers. Now I'm asking you a question. Can we work on floating point numbers? Okay, decimal numbers. Okay, 0.3. So what do you expect? True and true and somebody say false, somebody say true. Why is that so? So what is 0.1 plus 0.1 plus 0.1? Okay, so mathematically speaking, it should be true. Sorry, false, yes. Sorry, this is true, this is false, sorry. So here, how about here? True and false and false. All right, this is based on our assumption of what is the value of 0.1 plus 0.1 plus 0.1. But our assumption might be wrong. Okay, so what are we going to do is that we're going to do a little experiment. Okay, so let's test A is equals to, I'm just going to type it here. Okay, so we check whether it's equals to 0.3. All right, so we have A equals to 0.1 plus 0.1 plus 0.1, B equals to 0.3. I'm checking A is equals to B or not. So which is exactly this expression here. And according to our calculations, or mathematically speaking, we should get a true value. So let's test it. Do we get a true value? No, we get a false here. Oh, this is where you need to wonder, why is that so? It means that something is not something is wrong with our expressions here, but it's something is wrong with what we think the value of 0.1 plus 0.1 plus 0.1 is. This is where, as a programmer, you start investigate. Okay, what is 0.1 plus 0.1 plus 0.1? Okay, it say that it's 0.3 with a couple of zeros here, last with a 4. So what we think 0.3 plus 0.1 plus 0.1 mathematically is supposed to be equal to 0.3, but when you plug it in Python, the computation is slightly off. It doesn't give you exact value of 0.3, it gives you some number very close to 0.3 with some additional 4 at the end. Okay, so here, okay, so it turns out that, okay, computations over floating point numbers might not be consistent with mathematical computations. Okay, so with integer, there is no issue as well. There is no such issue. But when it comes to floating point numbers, there could be such an issue. So this is called floating point error. Okay, it has something to do with the fact that some of the floating points, such as 0.1, so 0.1 is a floating point number that cannot be expressed precisely using finitely and binary digit. Okay, so this is something, so we will study this in the later part of the course as well. Okay, so the floating, the number 0.1 can't be expressed finitely as finitely many digits, okay? So intuitively speaking, everything in your computer are expressed as 0 and 1, okay? Everything in alphabet, numbers, they're all expressed as 0.1. And when we express number as when we express 0.1 as binary number, unfortunately, there is no way to make it into finite such binary number. It will require infinite many such binary digits to represent 0.1 precisely. And hence, it will only be expressed in a number that is close to 0.1, but not exact 0.1. And so when you do computations, where you plus something that is close to 0.1, but not exactly 0.1, you might get some errors, okay? We will look at this very in detail in I think chapter 6, lecture 6, okay? Now, So right now, when we talk about numbers, we always talk about integers first, and we'll deal with floating point numbers later. So we know all of these might not be true. Okay, so we know all of this might not be true. Now, we know to build these individual Boolean expressions that give true or false, we can combine them. We can combine two Boolean expressions or negate the Boolean expressions using operators such as AND, OR, and NOT. Okay, so what is this AND, OR, and NOT here? So you have an expression, X is an expression, and Y is another expression. So X is a true value or false value, Y is a true value or false value. And you can combine these two expressions into one using X and Y in such a way that it will return true if both of them are true. Okay, so if X is true and Y is true, it will return true. However, if any of them is false, if either X or Y is false, it will be false. Okay, so a quick remark. So what does it mean is that both X and Y have to be true for the expression X and Y to return true. Okay, so if any of them, if either X or Y, any of them is false, it will return false. Now, OR is the other way around. So we basically say that if X or Y is true, then it will return true. Okay, but if both of them are false, it will return false. So both X and Y have to be false for X or Y to return false. All right, so if either X or Y is true, then X or Y will be true. But if both of them are false, this will be false. Okay, and NOT basically negated. If X is true, not X will be false. If X is false, not X will be true. All right, so not X, just flip. So if X is true, okay, so if X is true, not X will be false, and vice versa. Okay. So let's look at one simple example using this here. So we have, for example, A is a number 50, and I say, what is A less than 100? Okay, this is 100, okay? Is it true or false? True. All right, if A greater than 0? Okay, so what is this expression here? A less than 100 and A greater than 0. Basically, combine the first two expressions with the operator AND. Is this going to be true or false? True. So if both are true, this will be true. Now, how about this here? True. So OR operator, if at least one of them, as long as one of them is true, it will be true. How about this? False. This will just negate the first statement, the first expression here. And here, false, and here. So look at this here. This belongs to here, which is false. And second expressions, which is here. So we are looking at false or false will be false. So false or false. So again, if you look earlier on, if both are false, false or false will be false. Okay. And how about here? False and false. So this is false and false, which is, of course, false. Now, let's look at minus 50. Is this true? Minus 50 is less than 100. All right, so this is true. How about A greater than 0? False. Now, how about here now? False. Why is that false? Okay, we are looking at true and false becomes false. For AND operator, both has to be true for it to be true. If one of them is false, it's going to be false. How about here? True. So OR operator, true or false is true. As long as one of them is true, is true. Okay, this is just negated. So we have false, true, and here. So we are looking at false or true. False or true is? True or false? True. Good job. So again, we are looking at all operator as long as one is true, is true. Now, how about the other way? False and true is false. Okay? False and true, one of them is false, it definitely is going to be false. All right, now let's do 100. False, good job. And true and false. True. And we're just going to negate this. So this is true, false, and so we are true or false is true. And we have true and false is false. Good. So we know that this part here not negate this part here. All right. And then if you look at this value here, this highlighted yellow value, okay, it's also negating true, false, false, true, false, true. Okay. So it turns out that when you negate the whole n expressions, what you get is not individual expression and flipping n to all in this way. Okay, so we have the following formula. Okay, so not, if you want to negate an n expressions, you negate individual expressions, you negate individual expressions, okay, and flip n to all, okay. So this is exactly what we get here. So you want to negate the whole thing, you negate individual expressions and change n to all and negate the second expression. And you can see that this is a negation from true to false, from false to true, from false to true. Now the same thing here, we are negating the whole or expressions. Okay, the same thing, the same idea. We are negating the whole or expression is the same as negating individual expressions and then flipping all to end. And then negating the second expressions. Okay, so as you can see from this example here, when I negate the whole or expression, I negate individual expressions. Instead of joining by or now, I'm joined by and. Okay, so from true to false, true to false, true to false. Okay, so this is a formula that you can use. Often say you want to simplify the expressions. So you see something like this, you can simplify it by first using the n expressions and negate the whole thing. Okay, so this is what we call the De Morgan's law. And what I show you is just using example. You can prove it mathematically. Okay. Now, what I'm going to ask you is that, so if you look at here, I want you to come up with a number A, okay, for which it can be both false. So look at here is that we have true, 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 false, and false, true. Another possibility is to have false, false here. Can you come up with a number A for which A less than 100 is false and A greater than 0 is false? Anyone? Is there a value A for which this can be false and this can be false? Anyone? Now, if you think very hard, do you think it's possible? Just plug in any number. So for A less than 0 to be false, so A must be greater equals to 100. Okay. So again, I'm going to write it here. So for A less than 0, less than 100 to be false, then A must be greater or equal to 100. Okay. So if A greater or equals to 100, can A greater than 0 be false? It's not possible, okay? So for A greater than 0 to be false, then A must be less than or equal to 0, okay? Now, we say that if both have to be false, it has to be first greater or equals to 100. It must be something less than or equals to 0. So it's not possible to have such a value. You want a value that is greater than 100, such as 101, 200, 1000. But you also need a number, such number to be less than or equals to 0, which is not possible. Okay, so this is not possible. Okay, so this exercise of thinking is asking you to think how to negate this. What is the condition for this to be false? For this to be false, it has to be greater or equals to 100. For this to be false, it has to be less than or equals to 0, and hence it's not possible. Such a thinking in your mind when you create an expression is very important, because you don't want to create expressions that will never to be true. That's never going to work. There is no value of A for which it can work. We don't want that, okay? So if we give me, right. Now, let's look at one example of using what we have learned to create a simple program. So say, for example, you create a program to ask user for a number between 0 and 100 inclusive. So it will include 0. User can have type 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way until 100, include 100. And you're going to display a message to indicate to the user whether the number entered by the user is valid or within the range, okay? So if user enters 12 is within the range, 12 is between 0 and 100, then we will say that it's true. If the user enters say -12 is not within this range, and we will say that it's invalid, or the number is a number. If we ask the question whether the number is within the range, we say is false. Okay, so we're gonna, for this, we first write an input statement. Okay, and the number between 0 and 100 inclusive both endpoints. Okay, and then first we're gonna do a type casting, because user input is always of type string, but we want to build a Boolean expressions that involve integer, because we're gonna compare integer. So we're gonna typecast the whole thing into int. So now the value of x will be of type int based on the user input. And then we're gonna print this statement where this part here will be true or false, okay? So it depends on user input. So it's the number within the range. So we're gonna write a Boolean expressions that evaluates to true if x is between 0 and 100, evaluate to false otherwise. So we know how to do this, okay? So say x equals to 14, for example. If we want it to be true between 0 and 100, so we're gonna do, say x is greater equals to 0, and x is less than equals to 100, okay? So this will be giving you a true statement. If it's greater equals to 0 and less than equal to 100 means it's within the range, then it's true. And if it is outside the range, such as 140, it will give me false value, or give me a negative statement, negative value, say -100, okay? So again, it failed on the first part and will give me false. So this is the Boolean expressions that will give us what we want. So we can write here, and then we can run this now. So any value that user input, okay, it say false because 130 is not within the range. I can type in a different value, say 100. 100 is within the range, it gives me true value. And if you give me -100, it's okay, false, because it's not within the range, okay? So this exercise or example is very easy. It's asking you to create a Boolean expressions so that it evaluates to true if it satisfies these conditions here. And this condition is to put a number between the range from 0 to 100, all right? Now, let's make it more challenging. We create more numbers, we create more conditions here. So now we're gonna ask the user, okay, to enter a number between 0 and 50, or between 100 and 150, both inclusive of the both ends. So inclusive of the both ends, okay? Okay, so these will have multiple expressions here. So we're gonna write here. So we have between 0 and 50 or between 150, okay? Now, again, the same thing. Between 0 and 50 is something that you know how to do. It's the same as here, between 0 and 100, except that instead of 100, now it's 50. Okay, so we're going to change here. Instead of 100, it's 50. Okay. This is the first part, between 0 and 50, inclusive. Okay, with some value of x. For example, okay, so this will be the first part. First expression, but it does come with another expressions with an or statement. So we're going to have an or statement. And now between 100 and 150 inclusive. So we know how to do this, 100 and 150 inclusive. What do we need to change here? 0 to 150 and 50 to, 0 to 100 and this is 250. So you know how to build one expression by itself. You just need to join them using or. So if you put here, this is true. This is greater or equals to 100, less than or equal to 150. If I choose something such as 100, 200, okay, you'll give me a false value because it's outside the range. All right, so we can put the whole statement here inside our program. All right, so the program basically just asks for user input again, typecast into int, so that value of x is actually a type int value. And then we can press and execute, and we get false. And if it's within the range, such as 25, okay, it gives me true value. All right. Now, Boolean expression does not work just with numbers. It can also work with lists. In fact, we use it a lot. For example, earlier on, we talk about index error. Okay, when user try to extract an element in the list that is out of index, it gives me index error. And I don't want the computer to crash every time you give me something that is out of index error. So we want to be able to create a Boolean expressions that tests whether the index is not going to give me an index error. So the index will not give me an index error if it satisfies this Boolean expression here, which is that the index number must be less than the length of the list. Okay, so if it's not less than this number, we can't retrieve that value at the index. It doesn't exist. Okay, another Boolean expressions that we're going to involve with type list is to check whether an element is inside a list. Okay, using the in operator, checking if x is in a certain list. Okay, it will give me true and false value. So we're going to look at an example here. I have a list here with 1, 2, 3, 4 values. Suppose I want to access index 10 of this list here. Okay, this index 10 will give me, if I try to, so let me just put it here. Okay, if I try to extract the index 10, the value at index 10 of L, it will give me an index error. So before I try to access this index number, this value at this index, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to check whether index is in this less than the value index. Okay, so here I'm going to write down. Okay, so index of a list starts with 0. Okay, if the length of the list is say n, okay, then the indices are 0, 1, all the way to n minus 1. If you have only n elements and you start counting from 0, the last index is minus 1. So in particular, the last index is n minus 1. Which means a valid index I must be less than n, where n is the length of the list. All right. So to check whether a list index is valid or not, we check whether index is less than the length of the list. Okay. say index equals to 10, for example, is valid index. We need to create a Boolean expressions that return to true if it is less than length of the list. So we're going to check if index is less than the length of the list. Okay, so if index is less than the length of the list, then this is a valid. Its valid index is a variable that will evaluate to true. Okay, if it's not, say for example 10 here is more than the length of L, the length of L is 4 here, okay, so it will say it's false. So here is example, index is valid, is false. Now if I type another index number such as 3, this will be true because 3 is less than the length of L, the length of L is 4. All right. Now another thing that I mentioned is whether an element is in the list using the in operator. Okay, so we need to create an expression. Okay, create a Boolean expressions that check whether X is in the list, whether element is in the list. Okay, using in operator. Okay, so this is easy. All we have to do is just type element in L. Okay, element will be the value initiated by 130, and using the in operator to a list is checked. It's going to be returned true if 130 is actually in L. If it's not in L, it's going to return false. So here's the example. It says it's false because 130 is not in the list here. However, if I change it to 13, right, now 13 is indeed in L, we get a true statement. All right. Now we have int, we have check less than, these are involving the list. Now let's talk about this int operator here. It's involved list, it can also be used on string. All right. So we have 3 in 2, 3, 4 return true, 13 in 2, 3, 4 will return false because 13 is not inside the list. Now if we want to look at, remember when we work on string and list, they share similar operators. One of the share similar operators will be int here. We have a character A is in a string contains the value ABC. So this will return true because A is in ABC. Okay, so let's do this together. Remember again, it is case sensitive. So I'm asking you, is this string here, capital A, is it inside this string? It's not because it's case sensitive. All right, how about AB here? Is it in ABC? It is true. Okay, it's basically check whether this substring is in this ABC string here. So this is written true. Now, how about this AC here? So A is in here, C is in here, but they are not consecutive. We are looking for a particular string AC. This substring is it inside this ABC as a consecutive character. So this is written false. Okay, and AB here, ABC here, is it in ABC? This is true. Good. So we know that the in operator also works in string, and in fact, we're going to use this a lot in creating our program. So one of the applications would be to check whether some elements is inside the string. So for example, where you have this problem here, you are asked to create a program to get user to input a new password. And usually when you create a new password, for example, they ask you certain conditions. It must contain alphabet, it must contain digit, and some of them say you must not contain punctuations. Some of them say you must contain some special characters. So we wanted some condition involving the string for the password to be a valid new password. So this is the program that we're trying to replicate here. Okay, so we will display a message to verify if user input password is valid. Now, all these conditions combined together will get complicated. So when we start programming, the first thing you need to do is to simplify your program with assumptions. You start small and then extend it further. Okay, so we start with a very simple condition. The length must be at least 8. Usually when you ask to create a new password, it has to be certain length to be secure. Okay, so very simple condition for a password to be valid is just one condition. The length of the password is at least 8. Okay, so which means we're going to create a Boolean expressions that will return true if the length of the password is at least 8. So we know exactly how to do this. This is really not that difficult. Okay, so first thing, we ask user to get the password, to enter the password. We don't have to typecast anything because password will be of type string. We want it to be a type string. And then we create a is valid, which is a Boolean expressions that we created. So this will return true if the length of the password is at least 8. So how do we get the length of the password? Using the function length password. And we want it to be true if it is at least equals to 8. So greater equals to 8. So this will be true if the length of password greater equals to 8. It will be false if the length of password is less than 8. Okay, and then we print the statement, the password you enter is valid, whether it's true or false. Okay, so we're gonna say if I just type ABC because I'm lazy to type a new password, and then say it's false because it only contains 4 characters. The length of the password that you enter is only 4. So now I'm gonna create more. Say ABC, D, E, F, G, H. Now it says it's true. It contains at least 8 characters. So we start with a very easy condition for the password to be true. Now we're going to extend it further. Okay, create a program to get user to input a new password. And now the condition for the password to be true is that it has to be at least 8 characters. The length of the password is at least 8, and it must contain at least 1 special characters in the following: the $sign, a hashtag, and exclamation mark. Okay, it must contain at least 1 of these. All right, so this is where you start to think, how do I do this? All right, so again, I will need a Boolean expressions. I will need to create a Boolean expressions. Okay. One Boolean expression is for that combine the 2 conditions. Okay. The first condition is this, which you already know, which is the same as before. So you use the same thing as before. Okay, the first condition is this, the first expressions. 2 expressions using AND operator because we want both to be true. So we have 2 conditions, so we use AND operator to combine these 2 Boolean operations. The first Boolean operation, the first Boolean expressions is length is at least 8, which is exactly what we have. Now the second Boolean expressions is what? Okay, so it has to be such that it contains at least 1 of these characters. So it's such that it is true if the $sign, if the $sign is in password, or because we just, as long as 1 of them is in, is valid, okay? Or the exclamation, the hashtag is in password, or the exclamation mark is in password, okay? So this will be your Boolean expression. You just need to write down in a Python way. Okay, so this is my is valid. The first one will be the same as before. So I'm going to copy here, right? Okay, and I'm going to combine with an AND operator, and that will be, and then I will have the second operation, second expressions, which is that this must be in password, or this must be in password, or the exclamation in password. So I will have the $sign is in password. Okay. Or the hashtag is in password, or we have the exclamation mark in password. Okay, so then the whole thing is expressions that we want to join to the first expressions. Okay, so let's try this. So we have one expression here, joy, with the second expression using AND operator. Inside the second expressions, it forms with three expressions that combine using OR operator. As long as one of them is true, if either the $sign is in the password or a hashtag is in the password or the exclamation in the password, it will be true. So let's run this. So if I just come up with some value, some strings that is of at least 8, but without all these special characters, I get false. Okay, so it's true here. The length of the password is greater or equals to 8. However, it doesn't contain this. So $ is not in password, so it will be false. Hashtag is not in password, it will be false. Exclamation mark is not in password, it will be false. So the whole second expression here will be false because none of them is true. And we have a true statement and a false statement. It will give us false. Now let's try this. If I have, say, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, and the end, I have some $sign, okay? And I get true because the first expression is true. It's greater or equals to 8. And second expression is true because $sign is in password. So we have a true statement here. A true statement here, whatever's the statement here, even though hashtag is not in, exclamation mark is not in, because we have an OR operation here, true or false will still be true. So we are looking at a true and true statement, so it's true. Now let's see if I have this here. Would it be true or false? Why? It's an and ABD hashtag has how many length? 4. We require it to be at least 8. Okay, so it will be false. Good. Now again, we want to build a very good password manager that verifies the user input is a new password. It comes with a lot of conditions, right? So we have used what we have learned, which is comparisons greater or equals to AND operator, OR operator, and IN operator combined in one program. Okay, but we're going to extend it further. All right, we're going to ask user to create a program that verify the password if it's at least 8. It contains one of these characters, and it must contain a digit. All right. So we're going to do exactly the same as before. The first two conditions are the same, except that now we need to create one more. We need to form another Boolean expressions that return true if password contains digit. So tell me, what are the possible digits? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. These are all the possible digits, okay? So you know how to do this. If you think about this, how do I know how to do this? These are all the possible digits. Can I use whatever that you have learned to do this or not? So again, so we need to check if 1 is in password, or if 2 is in password, or if 3 is in password. Actually, I forgot the 0. Okay. So we actually I need another one. If 0 is in password, or 1 is in password, and so on and so forth. Okay, this is getting tedious. You need to write 10 expressions of some digit is in the password and combine it using OR operators. So this is getting very tedious, and we're going to try to do homework to do it today is to write these expressions, combine the first two. So this, you will be having another AND operator here. We have Control C. So to do, we have another AND operator, and these will contain the Boolean expressions. So this is to do, okay? Such that you have check whether 0 is in password or 1 is in password, and so on. Now, after you write this, you realize that, hey, this is getting very tedious. Is there a better way to do this? So as a programmer, we always think, I don't want to write down manually 10 Boolean expression of OR, joy by OR. Is there a better way to do this? Now, this is something we're going to learn in the next lecture. Thank you, class.